Hello again, everyone. Today, I want to talk about Curios, an oft overlooked part of our kit. I don't usually talk about them in builds because they are highly up to your own preference. So if I'm giving recommendations here that don't really fit your playstyle, um, that's okay. You're welcome to use whatever you want. At the end of the day, it has minor effects on your gameplay. I'm going to make a recommendation for each class as far as what I think is the optimal choice near the end of this video. First, I want to talk about how exactly these things work and what they can roll. So first off, there's 4 different stats you can get on them. There's stamina, there's toughness, there's health, and there's wounds. Now, I sort of think of these as like tiers in terms of how novice you are as a player. Very novice players, especially players who are pushing higher difficulties, as you push those higher difficulties, the game removes wounds from you. So you might play with a wound curio in order to offset that loss. It allows you to make more mistakes, and by making more mistakes, you have more chance to learn from those mistakes. It really sucks as a player who is new, maybe you're pushing 50 hours to jump into Damnation and you have 1 down and then you're dead. So you might not even get a chance to really play if you're taking a lot of damage. So it allows you to stick in the game a little bit longer. However, as you grow your skill, I think that these become irrelevant very quickly. And the main reason why is because there's a diminishing return to wounds. If you are using a lot of wounds, if you are going down, except for playing that one type of zealot, if you're going down that much, you just might not be ready for that level of gameplay. And that's okay. Scale it back to a level where you're pushing yourself, but you're not spending most of the time on the floor, right? Because you can't improve if you are outside of what's called your zone of proximal development. If it's just way above your skill level. It would be like me trying to play against a grandmaster in chess when I'm a novice. I need to find someone who's an intermediate to push my skills. Anyway, going on from there. So maybe 1 wound trinket if you absolutely need it. But after you phase those out, I would recommend looking into toughness and health trinkets. Toughness and health, obviously, it offers real stat benefits, and it's going to make you harder to put down on the ground in the first place. These are sort of class based, so if you are playing a zealot or an ogryn, you're 9 times out of 10 going to want to go for health, and that's because they have such a large health pool. Both of these classes also benefit from things that health can do for them, such as zealot's ability to regenerate their HP by fighting on their last stand, or the one where you take damage and regenerate HP. Ogryn can interact with things and pick up allies while he's taking HP damage, and no other class can do that. So having massive HP on these characters, I believe Zealot can have up to 353 if you're fully maxed out, and Ogryn can have an absurd amount, like 500 or so. It just makes you really hard to kill. Now the counter side of that, the flip side of that, is toughness. Toughness is the primary defensive stat of veterans and psychers, and the reason is, firstly, because they have higher base numbers for those shields to begin with. I'm going to call them shields from here on out. So they get more benefit from having a roughly 50% increase to toughness because they start with a higher number. Makes sense, right? And both of these classes also have huge ways to regenerate their toughness. The Psyker has lots of ways of regenerating toughness through dealing crits and getting kills, and the Veteran has probably the best way of regenerating toughness in the game, is using your Shout ability to fully fill your toughness, which means that if you're playing with wound trinkets or health trinkets or stamina trinkets, you're missing out on 17% toughness that you could be gaining every time you shout, making you just that little bit more tankier. However, there is a downside to using these trinkets, is that they only offer defensive stats. Now you'll note that none of these offer offensive stats. However, there are some things that would be considered pseudo-offensive stats, and that is stamina. Because stamina is the last type of trinket, and it's the most aggressive type of trinket. I would recommend stamina as you are progressing in your skill and you phased out wounds, and you probably have all toughness or all health trinkets. as you are progressing your skill, you're going to take less and less hits. And the only sort of limiting factor to how many hits you will dodge or block is going to end up being your stamina. Because personally as a player, when I was in an intermediate skill level, I was taking a lot of hits. I was glad I had that health. But now when I play on a character such as the veteran, I get into melee with my knife, and my goal is not to take some hits, it's to take no hits. And in order to do that, I need stamina to shove enemies, to block enemies, to sprint, all that stuff. It's basically your fuel that keeps you aggressive and keeps you evasive from taking damage. If you're running a full dodge build, speed build, you want stamina. So I would recommend, my general recommendation would be, unless you have a build that you are very sure you're not going to take any damage at all, would be 2 defensive trinkets, like 2 toughnesses or 2 health and 1 stamina. Generally +3 max stamina, that's a lot of stamina, especially for certain weapons that only have like 4 stamina on their own. Let's talk about the secondary parts of these Curios here, and in order to do that, we're going to look at the lists that are available. So there's a lot available here. Some builds would, if you are, particularly if you're Psyker, you don't need stamina regeneration. However, I think stamina regeneration for every other class is the absolute best blessing or best perk you can take on any Curio, simply because there is no other source of stamina regeneration in the game. There are other ways that you can get your stamina to regenerate sooner, such as there's a lot of nodes on the veteran tree that do that, but there is nothing that causes your stamina to regenerate more quickly once it's begun, except for these Curios. So by stacking 3 of these, you get 36% stamina regeneration, and just like we talked about before, stamina, as you progress and become a more skilled player, ends up being your fuel to dodge attacks, to push enemies back, to use push stab attacks, and to sprint, all things that are going to keep you out of damage's way and let you be really aggressive and kill lots and lots, and we like that. So stamina regeneration is my first pick. My second pick would almost always be some sort of max health or max toughness to whatever your defensive stat is. So health if you're Ogre or Zealot, toughness if you're Psyker or Veteran. Now, the third pick down here is sort of a free-for-all. So let's go over what's available here. And I'm going to look at them from a perspective of if you were going to run 3 of these on your build, because I think that's the way that they become the most effective. Like on its own, 4% combat ability regeneration is not very much, but with all 3 trinkets having 4%, that's 12%, and that becomes a tangible difference for certain builds. So I would rate combat ability cooldown regeneration pretty decent, especially on like stealth builds who want that cooldown to comp just that little bit faster. That can make a lot of difference in how much time you spend out of your stealth. Corruption resistance in general is very poor. That's because there's several ways of clearing out your corruption, as well as the newly introduced little med syringes that also fully clear corruption from 1 wound worth of HP. Corruption when this game came out was a big problem, but nowadays most people are not picking up grimoires or anything because they're incredibly unrewarding, so you don't generally need to have corruption resistance. If that is, if you can dodge like slime and pox bursters and stuff. We've already talked about max defenses, but block efficiency, I think blocking is probably one of the weaker skills in the game. As you become a more high level player, you won't be blocking as much as you'll be shoving enemies away. I have not tested to see whether the block efficiency improves the efficiency of shoving, but I have my doubts. Granted, 30% block efficiency isn't that great anyway. The attacks you'd really want to block, unless you're playing Ogrin, you really can't, such as attacks from Maulers and Crushers. So I would rate block efficiency pretty poorly. I don't think you should be blocking too much in this game. On certain weapons, or on certain builds, sprint efficiency can be very nice, especially if you're trying to be very fast, but I think it falls behind a lot of, no pun intended, I think it falls behind a lot of other blessings just because sprinting isn't really, if this was sprint speed, that would be a big difference, but it's efficiency. And if you have a lot of stamina already from your trinket and you have stamina regeneration, it's not going to be that important. Revive speed. I think this is pretty garbage. If you had 3 of these, you'd have 30% revive speed. If this is 20% revive speed, it would be very nice, but it's not. Toughness regeneration speed. I see this one a lot, and I think people are confused about what it does. And I could be confused about what it does, so please let me know if I'm misremembering this. But toughness regeneration speed does not refer to how quickly your toughness regenerates when you're in coherency. Like, you won't fill up your bar 90% faster because you're in coherency. It refers to how much time it takes from the time you've last taken damage to when that regeneration starts. So when the game initially came out, I saw a lot of people running this, thinking that it would make their toughness bar like fill up almost instantly. That is not the case. The only thing that can do that is increasing the number of people that are in your coherency, and I think there might be one Ogren perk that does it. But this is just going to lower the amount of time it takes from your last time you took damage to your toughness to start regenerating it, and that's just generally not a very rewarding trait to take. It is very alluring on the surface because it has 30% on there, and people see that number and get all excited. If you were grinding for levels just to have an absurd number next to your name, 10% experience, can't go wrong. If you're grinding for ordo dockets just to have an absurd number up here in the corner, can't go wrong with 10% ordo dockets. Remember, this third pick is an absolute freebie, so if I pass over something that you would like, feel free to keep it. Now, I think Curio as main mission reward is absolute dog shit garbage, and I would never ever take it in my life. I have no idea why this would be considered a good thing to get, because Curios are generally nowhere near as good as weapons, so who knows who's doing that. And then we have the 6 different damage resistances, and I think if we just go over all of these, I think there's only one that has any use at all, because flamers nearly instantly break your toughness if you're in them, and then they start to deal damage to you. Having 60% resistance to that is going to make you take like 1 extra tick of fire damage to break your toughness, and generally the rule for Tox Flamers is to just get out of them. They're very avoidable. Same with Bombers. Hounds do not do almost any damage at all. In fact, the most damage they generally do is when they hit you and corrupt a part of your health upon initially hitting you. Same thing with mutants. There's very easy ways to avoid taking any damage from mutants by positioning yourself near walls, and generally you'll be freed from mutant before they can do more than like 10% of your HP. Snipers also, I don't really know who's tanking sniper shots with plus 60% sniper damage resistance, which leaves us with this stat here, plus 20% damage resistance to gunners. Now, this does not apply to your normal everyday rifleman that's on the field, but it does apply to shotgunners and machine gunners. And those are very, very dangerous enemies, especially the shotgunners. Having 60% damage reduction against them, you will absolutely feel the difference, especially if you are a melee character getting into the fray. If you're a more ranged focused character, this is probably not essential at all, like say if you're a psyker or something. But if you're a frontline character, the amount of abuse you can take from a gunner shooting you point blank in the face becomes insane with this much damage resistance, 60% to them. So I highly recommend that if you are at all concerned about taking a defensive trait for your last part of your perk. So generally, my best recommendation for trinkets, if you are running an at all normal setup, is to have 2 defensive trinkets. For instance, I'm playing veteran, so I'm using toughness with additional toughness in the perks, stamina regeneration, and gunner damage resistance, and then 1 stamina blessing, just to allow us extra time where we can sprint, more shoving, more pushing, all that good stuff. Remember that your dodging is not tied to your stamina though. And same with the perks on that one. So I think that's my general best setup. However, there's you might not need stamina on all builds, so you could drop that and slot in more toughness as you wish. But my encouragement to, I know I have like newer players in my audience as well, My encouragement is that if you are using any wound curios, is to try and step yourself away from those and go into more toughness or health curios, and push yourself to be down less. It will help you go down less. And the ultimate goal is to take no damage at all, right? Anyway, I think that's a good look at all the stats in the Curios. There's one more thing I want to say about them, and you might have noticed it so far, which is that the main stats, the main blessings for these Curios have ranges that they can fall in. And I just want to quickly touch on what the best ones for each type of trinket are. The one exception to this is the wounds trinket. It can only roll with one wound. So don't waste all your money or time trying to find a +2 wounds trinket. However, there are, kind of rarely, +3 stamina trinkets, as you just saw. These are very nice to pick up if you're getting any stamina in there. +3 is a 50% increase over +2 stamina. It's pretty sizable. A little more rare than that is a 17% toughness trinket. These can roll from, I think, 14 when you're at level 30. I think they can roll from like 14 or 15 to 17%. So we obviously want to pick up that extra percent when we can. If you happen to see a 17% in the store, go ahead and grab it up. Especially if you have the money to spare on it, because with the upcoming crafting update, we'll be able to change all of these perks freely. So even if it doesn't roll absolutely perfect perks like I did in here, when the new crafting updates comes out, I'll be able to swap that out with a 5% toughness and have a perfect trinket. So always good to hold on to the best possible rolls. And speaking of the last type, the rarest type to get the best possible roll on is the max health trinkets. Finding these things is the scourge of my existence. I need some on my zealot. I've found 1 out of 3 so far. But they are very rare to get 21% max HP. 20% is what a lot of people think is the cap, but there are these sneaky hidden 21% max health trinkets that you can get. And remember, just like I said a second ago, it doesn't matter what they roll for perks. Hang on to them until the crafting update. You'll be able to put whatever you want down here, and you'll keep that 21 max HP. All right, that is all our recommendations for Curios. I tried to keep it brief, but I know I just rambled on forever. I did this in response to a comment I saw in the last video. Hopefully it helps you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe if it did help you, and I will see you very soon with another gameplay video.